And welcome. Sorry for the fruit basket turnover out there in terms of seating. We got a number of folks here that have to be here that we're going to take up, and as we take these folks up, that'll give a little more space for you all. So, and courtesy to the House member who is here with us, we're going to take up his bill 3583. We're not going to call on you to testify, but to the degree that we need a nod of the head or shake of the head, we may invite that, okay? But for the record, we know you're here. Bob, tell us about this. It was subcommittee on Thursday. A number of the members are here. Senator Odo, the chair of that, needs no help likely in explaining this, or rather Senator Sin can do this herself. Tell us what this bill does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. H 3583 provides the offense of, creates the offense of sexual extortion. It would be a felony to intentionally and maliciously threaten to release the private images of another in order to compel or attempt to compel the victim to do any act or refrain from doing any act against his will with the intent to obtain private images or anything else of value. There would also be a provision that local school districts must work with the Department of Education, SLED, and the AG's office to educate students and parents. The penalties would be 5 years for first offense, 10 years for a second, and 20 years for a third or subsequent. If the victim was a minor and the person convicted was an adult, then the penalty would be up to 20 years. If the person convicted is a minor, then it's a misdemeanor of up to 1 year. And finally, if the victim suffers great bodily injury or death and the fact finder finds proximate causation, then it's up to 20 years. There is a subcommittee amendment.
All right, and again, this is offered by Representative Guffey, a known story, a tragic story, and Senator Sin and then Senator Hutto ask you to give whatever detail that you'd like to offer for the full committee.
Certainly. Well, actually, I had not heard of this horrible story, and then went and, after hearing Representative Guffey, I went and looked everything up, and it just broke my heart. It will break anybody's heart. And I did not realize we did not have a law in place to deal with folks who basically sextortion a victim. In his case, he had a young son who had sent some naked images, I believe, over to a girlfriend, or he thought it was a girlfriend, somebody online, and immediately he started getting threats, and he actually tried to pay this, what he thought was a young lady, off. One time, of course, he's 17 years old and doesn't have money, and he basically felt as though his father was running for office. And anyway, he basically felt as though he couldn't handle it any other way, and he ended up taking his life. And this is something that we definitely need to address. We do have a subcommittee amendment. I think his law is straightforward, and everyone, it was unanimous on the subcommittee, felt that we needed to move on this bill. But what our amendment does is several things. It makes it illegal not just to distribute, but to exhibit or distribute images like that someone could use for extortion purposes. In addition, it changes the image. It can just be one image. It doesn't have to be multiple images. And it makes it such that if the offender is a juvenile, it will be handled in family court. That wasn't clear in the original bill. And finally, we set up, actually at Representative Guffey's request, a reporting deadline so that there must be an annual report from the Department of Education July 1st on anything that happens in this regard. I would move adoption of the subcommittee amendment unless anyone has questions.
All right, questions. Motion seconded. All in favor of that, say aye. Aye. All right. Now further.
Motion for favorable report.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
There be any opposition? None. We will pass this out, and you know that it will require one more hurdle, but I dare say, Representative Guffey, that anybody on the Senate side will do anything but support this wholeheartedly. So thank you for your efforts here, and you got work to do on the House side. Thank you. All right, we are now going to jump back to the agenda, and we're going to take up the Public Service Authority board members, these folks have been screened by the sub and the full perk, and now we have the responsibility to report these to the full Senate, and their names will be taken up again hereafter, assuming a favorable report on each. Breeden, if you will, tell us about these fine folk, and let's knock them out.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have today 6 candidates for appointment to the Santee Cooper Board. They're all initial appointments, and in your binders there behind the, I think in the 4th page maybe, there's a chart of current board members and appointments we're considering today. 5 were appointed by the governor, Mr. Charles Samuel Sam Bennett II for the 1st Congressional District, Mr. Stacey K. Taylor for the 2nd Congressional District, Mr. Charles E. Dalton for the 4th Congressional District, Ms. Alyssa Richardson for the 6th Congressional District, Mr. John Samuel West for the Berkeley County seat, and then we have one ex officio board member, it's a non-voting role, that was appointed by Central Electric Power Cooperative, and that is Mr. E. Paul Basha. A little background real quick. The Santee Cooper Screening Subcommittee of the Public Utilities Review Committee sent each candidate a set of questions to elicit information with respect to their knowledge of the operations of Santee Cooper, knowledge of best practices for boards of directors, and knowledge of the Freedom of Information Act. Each candidate appeared before the subcommittee April 26th and answered further questions on those issues and others. Copies of the transcript from that hearing and the full committee hearing are available here, and we also have candidate screening packets for anyone who would like to review them. So last week, the full committee of the Perks full committee met on May 3rd to further question the candidates and make a determination regarding their qualifications. Review committee determined that each candidate meets the qualifications prescribed by law for service as a director of Santee Cooper. At this time, we have Mr. Sam Bennett. If you could come up, please. Microphone on.
Yes, sir.
And, all right, and we'll swear you in if you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you'll give today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And can you please state your full name for the record?
Charles Samuel Bennett II.
All right, thank you. As mentioned, Mr. Bennett's here for the 1st Congressional District seat, the term for which is January 1st, 23 to January 1st, 2027. He was appointed by the governor April 18th of 2023. Mr. Bennett, upon review by PERC, it was determined that Mr. Bennett meets the general qualifications prescribed by law for service as a director of Santee Cooper. He is a resident of Hilton Head, South Carolina. He has been a resident of South Carolina for at least the immediate past 5 years and is a qualified elector of this state. Mr. Bennett meets the education requirement pursuant to Act 90 of 2021. He obtained a Bachelor of Arts degree from Winthrop University in 1992. He obtained a Master of Public Administration degree from the University of South Carolina in 1995. Mr. Bennett possesses a background of substantial duration and an expertise in energy issues as exhibited by his professional experience and training. Mr. Bennett is currently the President and Chief Operating Officer of Sea Pines Community Services Associates, Incorporated. He was employed by Santee Cooper as Manager of Economic Development from 2011 to 2015, and then Vice President of Administration from 2015 to 2020. He's also worked as Assistant City Administrator for the City of Goose Creek, City Manager for the City of Clinton, and City Administrator for the City of North Augusta. Mr. Bennett's responses to written and oral questions reflect that he understands various electric issues in South Carolina and has working knowledge of the operations and activities of Santee Cooper. The review committee's investigation did not reveal any evidence of unethical conduct by Mr. Bennett. And as such, Mr. Bennett has been nominated for initial appointment. The review committee believes Mr. Bennett possesses the statutory qualifications and has depth of experience to serve on the Santee Cooper Board of Directors. Mr. Bennett, do you understand the responsibilities and obligations of this position?
Yes, sir, I do.
Are you committed to serving a full term?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll open it up to questions.
Okay, questions of the full committee members regarding Mr. Bennett's desire and willingness to serve on the Santee Cooper Board.
Mr. Chairman.
Massey, excuse me.
Sam, hello.
Yes, sir.
What are the job duties of the Vice President of Administration for Santee Cooper?
At the time I was Vice President of Administration, I was over general procurement for the organization, everything except for fuels and legal services, so any commodities, goods, contractual services, excluding the nuclear piece of the company. I didn't deal with any of those contracts. So it was really the general operations, working with the transmission group, the generation group, the distribution groups, managing the warehouses as part of that. Also over facilities, parks, grounds, reclaiming materials, recycling materials, those kind of things. It's a city manager.
Why didn't you deal with any of the nuclear? Were you excluded from that?
That was not part of that fell under my job duties or responsibilities as VP of Administration. Yes, sir.
Okay. Who hired you?
I was hired by a gentleman named R.M. Singletary, who was the Vice President, I don't remember R.M.'s exact title, of General Services, I believe, in 2011, to be the Manager of Economic Development.
Why did you leave?
I left in February of 2020. I had a family member who had gotten very sick, my younger brother. He developed an illness, and it was going to be a terminal illness, and I needed to spend more time with him. And unfortunately,
I understand. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bennett, if you would, please give us a sense of how you assess Santee Cooper's role in the economic development arena.
I think Santee Cooper should play a very active, but also very supportive role in the area of economic development. During my time as Manager of Economic Development, worked very closely with the Commerce Department, the various municipalities and counties around the state, generally trying to support their efforts and endeavors, as well as the electrical cooperatives, the South Carolina Power Team. Probably the one area we were the primary lead on economic development came to the Camp Hall and the Volvo project, where we actually ended up buying the property and setting the ball rolling to get the Volvo to locate in the Charleston area. That wasn't something we typically did. We used other entities and supported them in doing that.
One more?
Sure, sure.
All right, so, yeah, thank you for that. And so given that sort of outlook on Santee Cooper's role in economic development and the evolving needs of large industrial users of electricity, coupled with Santee Cooper's ongoing struggles with having adequate generation, how would you look at large industrial users wanting to build their own generation behind the meter, for example?
I think the board would have to look very closely at it if there were ways that it could work so it didn't impact negatively the other customers of Santee Cooper. It's something the board should give due consideration to, but I don't think you should trade one customer off for another as it relates to rates and costs associated with that additional generation.
But that's a conversation you're willing to engage in?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bennett, as I think about Santee Cooper and the image that it depicted over the last decade, and in some instances not a very good depiction as being a friendly agency to municipalities as well as to counties, what do you propose to kind of change that, or do you see that as a problem?
Well, I think Santee Cooper certainly has to always be put our best foot forward in everything we do. You know, we're there to serve the citizens of South Carolina and the customers at the end of the line where the meters sit, whether it's a co-op customer or a municipal customer or a Santee Cooper customer. So what we've got to do is make sure that we're engaged in a way that's meaningful for those customers, whether it's a residential customer or a community or a city, and find ways to help them, whether it's demand side management, keeping their costs down, or promoting the economic development projects around the state that lift everybody. So I think we've got to be very engaged as an organization and positively with the elected officials there and find out what their needs are and do our best to meet those needs in each community. That's a big task.
And on the subject of alternative energy sources, what do you think is our next phase in doing such?
I think you're going to see, and I think actually the Santee Cooper Board this morning adopted an IRP that's going to put a big push on adding lots of additional solar capacity, as well as looking at fully retiring the Winyah generating station while adding some combined cycle gas units to bring to help not only the cost of energy in the future, but also to mitigate the environmental costs associated with the energy. So I think Santee Cooper is moving in the right direction. It needs to stay on that course and do everything it can to do those things.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just one thing, more of a comment, and I guess, Sam, since you've had some experience at Santee Cooper already, and more specifically because of the leadership under which you served at Santee Cooper, I guess you understand that, and I know you do, but I want to hear you say this out loud. You understand that the role of a board member is not just to rubber stamp whatever leadership gives you, right?
Yes, sir, I do, and I think you would find with the folks that have worked for me and with me and around me, and even some of those folks at Santee Cooper now, the nature of my personality is be engaged, involved, and as I think I told Senator Rankin at one of our last hearings, maybe Senator Hutto, the buck stops with the board, and so the board has to be engaged. Not with running the organization, the micromanagement, but the strategic decisions, the things that matter. The board has to know and approve and be part of those conversations, and they can't be a rubber stamp.
And part of the reason, as you understand, that I'm even asking this question is that during the time while you were there, the CEO was not questioned to that extent. The board was not engaged, and we saw the results of that. And so I just wanted to impress upon you, I mean, you don't strike me as a wallflower, right? So, but it's important that this board be engaged and question the leadership about what's going on and making sure that the board understands everything that's going on, so that we do not have a repeat situation of where we were.
So
You're on board with that?
I understand that completely and totally, and have thought long and hard about those things before I agreed to do this. I think what's happened with Santee Cooper in the past is unfortunate. It's not the right word, but it's the word I'll use this time. We've got to do a better job as an organization. You know, we've got to perform. We've got to win, and I don't mean win as we're beating anybody, but we've got to. The things that the state needs, that Santee Cooper has to do, we have to do them and go do them well, and we haven't done that recently, and the board's got to address that and change it.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bennett, I've just a couple of questions. We've met now 3 times.
Yes, sir.
Each of these are under oath, and there's been a transcript. I commend the full membership to read every word of these transcripts to see in greater detail if you're interested. To the point of rubber stamping, and I'll take that as my analogy to your being appointed by the governor. Obviously, you have been vetted by not just the legislative side, House and Senate, but folks in I would suggest, the co-op community. We've read your letters of endorsement. We've read all that. We've heard you testify. But how do you, and I've seen and heard the answer, how do you resist the political pressure, perhaps, that may be borne upon you to do something that may be of contrary position to your own?
Well, I think the first thing I have to do, Senator, is whether it's one of the folks in front of me, or whether it's the governor, or whether it's the governor's staff, or whether it's a House member, is explain to them that my first role and responsibility is to Santee Cooper and as an organization, the fiduciary responsibility of the organization, and that I'm not going to do anything that's illegal, immoral, or unethical in any way, shape, or form. And if that's not something that they can handle, then I'm going to have to bring it to the chair's attention at that level, and then we'll go with whatever the general counsel says is next. But it's a hard question for me to answer sitting in front of all these elected officials across the state. But that's the honest answer. It's not going to happen. That's not the nature of my personality. When I was in the world of procurement for Santee Cooper, we did a lot of contracts, a lot of very extensive contracts, and I got calls from around the state from folks. And the answer was always, this is our process, go through the process, and your bid will be evaluated just like everybody else's, and we're going to make the best decision possible for Santee Cooper, not for you or your friend or your uncle or your brother.
And again, I appreciate that answer, and would never expect that any undue, illegal, or immoral, or shade of gray influence would come politically. And so, again, I would never assume that, or we expect it. And of course, you know how
Nor would I.
You would know how to quickly report that. My next question is in that vein, again, not undue, illegal, immoral, or shades of gray versus black and white. But again, you have friends in all customer classes, of which Senator Clymer brought up the industrial class. Of course, there's the direct serve, and then the cooperatives. How are you going to resist the, hey, my friend, let's do this, hey, doesn't this seem like a good idea, wherever that message might be offered from those three or other classes?
I appreciate the clarification on the question, Senator. So I think the first part of that is that any process in dealing with customers at Santee Cooper needs to be a very open and transparent process done at the board level, so that all the customers have an equal understanding of what the board's doing, how they're addressing matters, how they're thinking about things. I mean, certainly there are times when there are competitive issues and proprietary contractual matters, but as it relates to how you're dealing with the customer classes, that needs to be open and out front, so that it's very clear if a member of the board or the board is looking to favor one class of customers over the other. That would be the first approach I would take with that, and then explain to whoever the person or persons were that we've got a responsibility to not just one of our customers, but all of our customers as it relates to making decisions for the customer classes.
I mentioned this, and I'll briefly, the best of times, the worst of times, from the political standpoint, you're coming in post all of the trouble that we all are aware of, Senator Massey alluding to in terms of those responsible. Again, the governor appoints you all. The governor is appointed, not this present governor, but every governor has had the appointment power of your board. You understand that, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you come in past the political upheaval of whether to sell y'all or not your decision, but a legislative, purely legislative. And so that's not something you have to worry about. But to the degree, if that were to be raised again, do you feel like you would be within your lane and carrying out your fiduciary duty to call out errors in the assumptions made by the would-be buyer or those proposing that a sale would and should occur?
Absolutely. And that is our responsibility as board members to make sure that whatever is said about Santee Cooper is accurate, whether it's a sale or whether it's a rate. I'm trying not to over answer the question, but hopefully those days are behind us. But if they aren't, then it's up to the legislature, not the board or others, to make those decisions again, just like they did previously.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, Mr. Bennett? Okay, there being none, would there be a motion for a favorable report? All right, moved and second. All in favor say aye. Aye. There being any opposition, none. Mr. Bennett, you are free to leave the building.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I appreciate the work y'all do.
You can stick around, but I don't know why you'd want to.
I maybe want to watch my other friends.
All right, very good.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we have Mr. Stacy Taylor. If you'll come forward. And raise your right hand, please. We'll swear you in. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your full name.
Stacy Kirk Taylor.
All right, Mr. Taylor is here for the 2nd Congressional District seat. The term for that seat runs from May 19th, 2022 to May 19th, 2026. He was appointed by the governor on March 15th of this year. The Public Utilities Review Committee has found that Mr. Taylor meets the general qualifications prescribed by law for service as a director of Santee Cooper. He is a resident of Chapin, South Carolina, and he's been a resident of South Carolina for at least the immediate past 5 years and is a qualified elector of this state. Mr. Taylor meets the education requirement pursuant to Act 90 of 2021. He obtained a Bachelor of Science degree from Clemson University in 95. He obtained a Master of Forest Resources degree from University of Georgia in 1997, and then obtained his JD from UNC Chapel Hill School of Law in 2000. Mr. Taylor possesses a background of substantial duration and an expertise in law and energy issues as exhibited by his professional experience and training. Mr. Taylor retired from Burr Forman LLP, previously known as McNair Law Firm, where he was a shareholder and partner from 2015 to 2019. From 2000 to 2015, Mr. Taylor was an associate and partner with Nelson Mullins. He has served on the South Carolina Board of Environmental Certification since 2016 and has been a member of the South Carolina Energy Advisory Council since 2018. Mr. Taylor's responses to written and oral questions reflect that he understands various electric issues in South Carolina and has working knowledge of the operations and activities of Santee Cooper. The Review Committee's investigation did not reveal any evidence of unethical conduct by Mr. Taylor and did not reveal evidence of any convictions or criminal allegations made against him. Mr. Taylor has therefore been nominated for initial appointment to the Board of Directors of Santee Cooper. The Review Committee believes Mr. Taylor possesses the statutory qualifications and has depth of experience to serve on the Santee Cooper Board of Directors and finds him qualified. Mr. Taylor, do you understand the responsibilities and obligations of this position?
Yes, I do.
Are you committed to serving a full term?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, questions of Mr. Taylor?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to express my dismay that somebody who graduated from law school the same year as I did has already retired. There's something not right about that. Secondly,
Didn't expect it either.
yeah, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
One of the questions that Mr. John asked you was if you understand the responsibilities and obligations of the position, and you answered yes to that question. Can you tell us what you understand those responsibilities and obligations to be?
I think one level you have the legal obligations that are in the statute. I think in terms of my personal obligation goes beyond that. And that's that by accepting that nomination, appearing here today, and depending on how things go, that is a commitment to my full commitment and investment in this position, the duty to each one of the categories of rate holders, of customers, the duty to the company as a whole, the success of the company, the communities that Santee Cooper serves, the resources that Santee Cooper manages. There's a lot that falls under that, and all of those are real important resources for the state financially or natural resource-wise. So a full loyalty and obligation to the best that I can serve those.
How do you uphold that loyalty when those interests may conflict? For instance, certainly you could have a situation where the interests of ratepayers conflicts with that of the company itself. You could have a situation where the interests of the company conflicts with the state, the taxpayers as a whole. How do you deal with those situations?
I think first out of that, I was a biologist doing consulting work in the timber industry back when I was going through grad school. And there was a lot of issues that normally you would say those can't overlap or those are kind of opposite of each other. And I think there are times when you look at those issues from different angles that there's a lot of ways to find synergies or find things that they actually don't conflict like you would expect. Outside of that, it's a balancing, and that is that judgment call of balancing the long-term financial stability of the company, because if that's sacrificed, then what is there? Balancing the natural resources that are there. I don't think those are ones that are normally going to conflict. The rate structure is There is a duty because you're an entity of the state, so there's kind of, to me, an extra obligation to the people of the state. So when you look at those, how does that balance against, okay, can we do that and maintain financial health? Can we do that and maintain what we have as the natural resources? So I think you get some kind of broad parameters, and then within that, making decisions and balancing those decisions, there's going to be advantages to some and disadvantages to some. That's the difficulty of it, but you've got to balance all that.
Yeah, I mean, you understand that you're coming in at a difficult time, and
Fortunately, a little less difficult than it has been, but yes.
well, sure, but there is a lot of relationships that need to be mended, and perhaps the current leadership is doing a good job in tackling that task. But when we talk about ratepayers, or you talk about larger partners like the cooperatives, I mean, there's a reason that there is a strained relationship between Santee Cooper and its ratepayers, or between Santee Cooper and the co-ops. I mean, you recognize that, right?
Correct.
And a large part of that is not just that that the rates are going to have to go up. And when we come out of the lawsuit terms, I mean, the rates are going to have to go up. I think everybody recognizes that. It's not just that that maybe the co-ops were on the hook for some of the cost. A larger part of that problem is ratepayers and the cooperatives feel like, with some merit, that they were flat out lied to. You understand that? And the board let it happen. I mean, you understand that too? Yeah, so, I mean, there will very likely be conflicts like that. I would just say, as I encouraged with Mr. Bennett earlier, I mean, you don't strike me as the type of person who's just going to take whatever somebody gives you and run with it. But I do think it's important in this position, especially considering the experience that Santee Cooper has had, and that we have all had because of Santee Cooper, that you be engaged, ask questions, insist on answers. Now, I don't think that the current leadership is going to try to pull one over on you, but I still think it's your obligation as a board member to ask the questions and to insist on answers to those questions, and to make sure that you have the information necessary to be there, because otherwise, I think if the board doesn't take the job seriously, if the board gets lax, we're going to get back. It may not be as bad as what we had before. We may not get into a summer situation, but we're going to have something bad happen. So I appreciate you stepping up. I appreciate you accepting the job. Appreciate you being willing to serve. But understand that there are a lot of us who are concerned, not about you, not about the board, the current board that we're going to have once all these appointments are confirmed. But we still have concerns about Santee Cooper and its relationship with its ratepayers, with the co-ops, and with us, frankly. Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Taylor, let me just kind of follow up on that. You are a student of the law. You have demonstrated your ability to study and learn and deal with the facts of cases thus far on multiple fronts I'm aware of. Not to quibble, but you do know that there's a record of the deception that SCE&G voiced or propelled or cast, I can't quite think of the word, but effectively fooled not only their shareholders, but Santee Cooper as well, based on rosy projections of the progress at the VC Summer plant. You're aware of that, right?
Yes, sir.
And so I'm not defending folks for asking the hard questions, or particularly if they didn't and they knew. But isn't it true that but for the Bechtel report coming out that exposed the lies and criminality of SCE&G, that likely we would have never known that the hellhole that we were in cost and over just horrific problems, we wouldn't have known that, correct?
Correct. I think over time, some of that might have begun to shake out, but in terms of the immediacy of it, that report was key in revealing what was going on.
And I am certainly not defending former administration or executive leaders there who, if they knew, did not communicate it to the board. And perhaps they did. Again, I'm not looking back except to say that this was not just a Santee Cooper failure. Folks are serving time in jail right now from SCANA or from SCE&G for the lies that they told both Santee Cooper, but as well as their own shareholders and the SEC. You know that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It is difficult, obviously, the times that you are coming in, except, again, the best of times that the political pressure of at least one externality, Senator Campson, of negative externality. The idea of selling Santee Cooper is now off the table. But you do, as Senator Massey referenced, you're coming in to a difficult time with a rate freeze that will end and the ability to mediate, not as the mediator, but as a board member, the impact that this will have across the customer classes, right?
Yes, sir.
And the pressure, again, you don't, is, again, similar term, you're not going to pat anybody on the back or rubber stamp just because they're your friend or they say, hey, let's do this, without doing your own due diligence, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And as a board member under the law, you understand that your fiduciary duty and legal fealty is owed to who and or what?
It's owed to the company, the future sustainability of the company, the financials of the company, and it's owed to the customer classes, and it's owed to the economic development efforts under what the statute provides out.
Hopefully, all of those are in concert, and everyone can smile and agree that every box is checked, but that's not likely going to be the case, right?
Correct. There's the difficult parts.
Okay. All right. And you're willing to do it, correct? You're willing to do it? All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Senator Kempson.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Taylor, good to see you. I've heard twice now that I'm over here. Are you looking?
I'm trying to figure out, yeah, where, thank you. I've gone through and was like, wait, I know he's here somewhere.
The good-looking black guy. The good-looking black guy. Very
Thank you.
nice. Very
I
well.
looked up on the screen.
Very well dressed. Me. I've heard twice about there is a Santee Cooper can never be sold. I think I've heard something to that effect, or we've moved past that. But I'm not aware of any legislation that prohibits the sale. When we talk about fiduciary duties, you have the duty of care and the duty of loyalty. I know as a good environmental lawyer working for a big firm, you know that. There may come a time where it makes sense to sell. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but in your view as a board member, if the P&L and looking at from an operational standpoint, it makes sense to sell, can you as a board member bring yourself to making that decision based on the information provided to you?
I think that's one of those, so the Santee Cooper as a whole is a valuable asset to the state in everything that provides, just in a dollars and cents business entity asset, in the resources it provides the state, in the community service it does, the natural resources it manages, providing power, and the obligation, seeing all of that, is to manage all of that the best that you possibly can for the people of the state. When it comes into what structure that might look like, I think any of that would be a later down the road if it was a decision, and then that's also at the direction of the that's the direction of the General Assembly and the people exercising their will through the elected officials, not the board members and what they think or what their purview is.
And I appreciate that. It's incumbent upon us, because it's a state asset, but being a steward of the assets via a board member, if you came upon information, would you have the prerogative to voice what you think would be, if it were a good decision to sell, could you come to the legislature and say that?
And I think if you look at it as the best interest of the state of a whole, best interest of the citizens of the state, best interest for the company, best interest for the customers, then that would, if it's in the best interest, then that is a consideration that needs to be in the decision-making and discussions with the General Assembly. That's might be difficult decisions, but honest and open and transparent decisions of what is the best way to manage and use this resource.
And I appreciate your response. Final question, are you aware of what percentage of Santee Cooper's operations currently burn coal?
So refined coal, I don't know the exact numbers on it, but refined coal is the dominant fuel source.
And I will represent to you, President Biden has a net zero policy, and not just President Biden, but if you look at any progressive country, they recognize that our environment is a great asset that we have, clean air, clean water, et cetera. Do you recognize that?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And with over 50% of the operation, and I don't know the number, but it's a high number because we talked about this during the last period when we had a great debate about whether we should sell or not. I wonder what efforts, and this is not something I'm asking if you don't know the answer. This is something for you as a board member to keep in mind as you make decisions. We got to transition into clean energy. And where you have an operation with the policies, the EPA, federal government, and other policies, we need board members, in my view, that are prudent about managing the operation so that we get away from coal and move to cleaner energy. And so I would, as you exercise your duties, I've heard great things about you from good people like Randy Lowell and others. I ask you to just be mindful of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I'm still sitting here wondering, and being a co-op member, knowing that the relationship that have existed over the years with co-ops and Santee Cooper have not been a sweet one. What do you think, or what would you try to put in place to help with developing a collaborative relationship, one that would take into consideration Senator Stevens represent portions of 5 rural counties, and those counties are looking towards economic development. They have some things that's already in place, and the co-ops are playing a vital role in that economic development. How can we get you back to the bargaining table as well as the co-op, and you guys come up with a plan that is best for the state of South Carolina so we can grow this state?
Not having access to all the inner workings of those relationships and the dynamics. So looking at this somewhat as an outsider looking at it. In my legal career, there was a lot of very complicated projects that you were bringing into communities. And this is getting there. When you bring those projects into communities, they might not be wanted in those communities, or there might be an opposition to that. So you're dealing with a very tense relationship, and in tackling that relationship, it's communications, it's transparency, it's having difficult conversations that people often don't like to have, and bringing people into the decision-making process of, here's where it benefits both, here's where it might not benefit. And that's not a, here's where it benefits both, and let me manipulate you on where it doesn't benefit. You've got to go through those conversations, because everybody's going to know in the end the different dynamics of it. So you're not going to pull something over on anybody. So how do you have those conversations of, for example, economies of scale on a project and a power production project? Well, there's economies of scale there that would benefit each other. So if that benefits, then where is the breakdown on moving forward on a project like that? Where's the concerns? How do you tackle it? So I think there's a lot of, and I'm sure a lot of this has gone on, and I might be looking at this completely naively, but I think there's a lot of communication and transparency to find out where are those true breaks in the relationship. Because looking at it from an outsider, it benefits both. It benefits the people of the state. It benefits the reliability of power across the state. So if all of that is good, where are we hanging out?
Yeah, let's pin something here. So you do believe that there is a problem with the relationship between the two?
From what I have heard, yes, sir.
Okay.
I haven't been a part of it, but for what I've heard from news and conversations and that kind of stuff, I see that there has been a breakdown in that relationship that's historically been there.
And you think you need to do something about it?
I think so.
Tell me some of what?
On the why?
Yeah, what?
On the what?
Uh-huh.
On the what, I think I would have to be more into one of these positions and have more understanding of what's been going on for discussions. But on the how to attack it, I think it comes back into maybe going back to the drawing board on some of the discussions and finding out, okay, for example, how much of the break is due to baggage from all the VC summary and decisions that were made there? How much is baggage from old board? How much is baggage from old administration and management? Where are those breaks in that? Are there ways to address those concerns, given you have responsibilities to all the customer groups, you got responsibility to the finance of the company? Are there ways to tackle those issues and alleviate those concerns? On the why, again, I think economies of scale on projects and ensuring reliable customer base. Santee Cooper kind of bearing also a burden of, regardless of what the co-ops are doing, they're still carrying a reliability of power supply across the state, that they're holding that responsibility while other people are making decisions. So it's, to me, as an outsider, it's in their best interest to have more of that working together, because ultimately they're still going to be holding the bag as a public entity for that reliability of power across the state.
So not being a wallflower, you believe that you can actually initiate change?
I have been in a whole lot of real sticky situations as an environmental attorney and managed, so typical attorney world, you tend to be managing your legal staff in a single issue. With the environmental practice, mine was more so giant projects, company personnel that might not be in support of what you were trying to do, communities that are opposed to you. So typically you were stepping into a situation that was a troublesome dynamic to begin with, and in there trying to build collaboration, trying to build buy-in. And it came through messaging, it came through discussions, and there's some things that just had to be an agree to disagree. Okay, how do we move past that? But willing to tackle those difficult conversations in a way that has confidence, that builds buy-in, not just I sat and talked to you, now I'm gonna go leave. No, how do I actually engage in this conversation that hears what you're saying and figures out, are there ways to tackle it? Where's this coming from?
Mr. Taylor, you know, I'm going to vote for a favorable recommendation for you, but I'm going to also remember some of these things that you have promised me in a sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Senator Madison?
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman, to follow up on what you were saying earlier, look, you're definitely not going to get me to defend anything that SCE&G did, right? And I mean, because I absolutely believe that the highest level of deceit was there. However, it's also clear from the information that we found a few years ago that the CEO of Santee Cooper knew what was going on. right? He was involved in those things. He had the information, yet he did not disclose that information to the board. The board did not ask about they did not ask the right questions about what was going on, and it was when you, Mr. Chairman, asked the question of the former chairman of the board about the existence of the Bechtel report, and then Mr. Limehouse back there was able to obtain a copy of that Bechtel report. Then that's when the whole world knew what was going on. But the reason I asked those questions earlier is that because we have that experience of the board not really questioning and holding the CEO accountable. If that had happened, then this would have come to light much earlier, and we wouldn't have been stuck with nearly as much of a problem as we have. To the chairman's point, it's right. There are some people, former SCANA employees, who are now doing time in prison. That's a great comfort to me every month when I pay my bill, and I'm paying I'm going to be paying for the next 15 years on something that I'll never get a benefit from. But that's why I think it's important that no matter how good the relationship is, no matter how friendly you are with whomever the CEO is, it is important, it is incumbent upon the board to hold that CEO and other members of the leadership team accountable, right? Even if you believe them, even if you like them, even if you play golf with them, even if you're good friends, you've got to ask the questions and hold those individuals accountable, because if you don't do it, we're going to get into another similar situation, right? That's my point. Thank you.
Amen. And to the very quick point, not a question for you, but to maybe the chagrin of this committee, we have taken a very serious, aggressive look at each nominee from the governor. Not to say that the governor's nominees perhaps aren't meritorious on their own, but I recall vividly a very drive-through-like screening process that we are in session. We meet standing up in the theater, whatever that movie place is, in the State House, and it was almost good to see you. How's your mama? Good to see you. How you feeling? Approved. That's not what we've been doing of late. So, any other questions? No comments, Mr. Taylor, by the board. By the full committee. If not, Senator Stevens has made a motion for a favorable report, I believe, conditioned on your proving that you're worth it. Is there a second? All right. All in favor, say aye. Any opposition? There being none, thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank
We're
you.
going to jump out of sequence here. We're going to take up Ms. Richardson, who is appearing by Zoom. She is in something U.S. Africa Command General in Kenya. We hope that our IT team members, graduate members, all of the Audiovisual Aid Club in middle school are ready to beam Miss Richardson up. I see her face. Welcome. Can you hear us?
Thank you. Yes, I can hear you fine.
All right, very good. You've met Breeden. We're going to go through the same routine here. And I want to know, literally, where are you right now?
I am in Nairobi, Kenya right now, and downstairs we're meeting with the AFRICON. He used to be the commander of AFRICON here.
And is this about community development in South Carolina?
This is about development all over the country. I heard a wild statistic this week. In 2050, 1 in 4 global citizens will live in Africa, and so it's about creating better relationships and finding investment opportunities across the entire continent.
Very good. And you are with the U.S. congressional delegation, is that correct?
I'm with a group called the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. It's a group of nonprofits, businesses, NGOs who pay close attention to America's foreign aid investments across the continent.
What time is it there, Senator Hutto wants to know?
It is 8:12 p.m.
Looking good. And are you with any of our congressional delegation members? I thought Breeden said you're maybe with Senator Scott or others, or no?
Oh, no, I wish Senator Scott was here, but no congressional delegation on this particular trip.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Ms. Richardson, please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you will give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, and please state your full name.
Alyssa Lee Richardson.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Richardson is here for appointment from the 6th Congressional District seat. That term would begin January 1 of next year, 2024, and run through January 1st of 2028. She was appointed by the governor on April 18th. After examination by the review committee, Ms. Richardson meets the general qualifications prescribed by law for service as a director of Santee Cooper. She's a resident of North Charleston. She has been a resident of South Carolina for at least the immediate past 5 years and is a qualified elector of this state. Ms. Richardson meets the education requirement. She obtained a Bachelor of Arts degree from Furman University in 2012 and her JD from Harvard Law School in 2015. Ms. Richardson possesses a background of substantial duration and an expertise in law as exhibited by her professional training and experience. Currently, Ms. Richardson is the owner of Palmetto Community Developers, and she has also worked as Deputy Chief of Staff for Senator Tim Scott from 2020 to 2023. Prior to that, she served as Assistant U.S. Attorney in the U.S. Attorney's Office for South Carolina, 2016 to 20, and also held a clerkship for Judge Seymour from 2015 to 16. Ms. Richardson's responses to written and oral questions reflect that she understands various electric issues in South Carolina and has working knowledge of the operations and activities of Santee Cooper. The review committee's investigation did not reveal any evidence of unethical conduct by Ms. Richardson and did not reveal evidence of any convictions or criminal allegations made against her. Ms. Richardson has been nominated for initial appointment to the Board of Directors of Santee Cooper. The review committee believes Ms. Richardson possesses the statutory qualifications and has depth of experience to serve on the Santee Cooper Board of Directors and finds her qualified. Ms. Richardson, do you understand the obligations and responsibilities of this position?
Yes,
Are you committed to serving a full term?
I am.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator from Charleston, Senator Kempson.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson, and thanks for being with us all the way from wherever it is you are today. We appreciate it. I'm aware of your work with Senator Scott's office, and we applaud you for your offering yourself for public service. I'm going to ask a series of questions, just very brief, along the lines of same ones I asked with Mr. Taylor. Recognizing that a high percent of the power or a high percentage of power is derived from the burning of coal and coal operations, do you have any thoughts with regards to how we have cleaner energy?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. As I said in previous hearings, I've seen Santee Cooper already moving towards and thinking about how to diversify that fuel portfolio. I heard your comments earlier, Senator Kempson. You're right, the current administration is very serious about pushing away from coal. From my perspective, we rely heavily on it here in South Carolina, and so we don't want to push away too quickly. But at the same time, we do have to be aware of what's coming down the pike, and that does include more emphasis on solar. I was even just reading an article today that NextEra is thinking about green hydrogen, and so this has to be a part of a conversation. And I think Santee Cooper is already trending in that direction, just given the realities of having challenges securing or procuring coal in the past year. So I think that diversification is important.
And I'm not sure, and I remember that when we had this discussion about the sale and the projection to meet some of the requirements as we go forward with the net zero requirements, and I'm not sure what the capital stack or the financing that's going to be required to transition the equipment. But at that time, Santee Cooper was challenged on the balance sheet. And so it's going to be incumbent upon the board and the General Assembly to make sure that, to the extent capital expenditures are required to accomplish what might be regulatory requirements, meet regulatory requirements, that we and you come to us if appropriate. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
All right. Would you be in a position, there's been some talk about evaluating a sale down the road should the situation require. And I want your opinion on being able to objectively evaluate and recommend as the situation dictates to the General Assembly to evaluate a potential sale. Can you give me your position on that?
Yeah, I can. I think the statute gives great guidance here. I think from a board perspective, I will always be balancing what's in the best interest. And there are a number of constituents in that question, the customers, the ratepayers, the financial integrity of Santee Cooper, economic development. There are a number of pieces that you're balancing, but more directly to your question about a sale, first, the statute also points out that would only be with legislative approval. That would be up to this body, this General Assembly, as to whether that was the conversation. But the short answer is, in that consideration, I think you come right back to that same question of balancing. Mr. Stacey Taylor said it well very earlier. If we're talking long-term financial integrity of the company, if there's no company to consider, that affects the rest of the balancing test. And so short answer is yes, that's something that would need to be balanced, also in concert with the approval of the General Assembly.
Okay. And my final question, and this is one that came up during the last debate on the sale, is with respect to procurement. Santee Cooper, I suspect, I have not looked at the numbers, but spends a lot of money. And until this point, I believe, I don't know, that you might be the first African-American that will serve on the board. Now, I could be wrong, and I certainly want to stand corrected if somebody wants to correct me. Do you know the answer to that question?
One of my mentors, Clarence Davis, was very quick to point out that I will not be the first. He was on the board at some point.
Well,
I don't know if he was the first.
He may have been a board member, but I don't know about Clarence Davis being a mentor to anybody but himself. I'm just kidding. He's a good friend of mine. And so we're going to look to you to make sure, as a state institution, that the procurement, in other words, the spending of Santee Cooper, properly reflects not the same old business as usual, but we are looking to broader considerations in terms of an institution supporting, first, local businesses. We got a number of state-owned assets and political subdivisions which do business, quite frankly, with out-of-town people. It just mind-boggling to me. Not that that won't be appropriate in some sense, but also that we have some sense of diversification, however you want to define it, in the procurement efforts. Thank you so much for being with us today, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, thank you.
Gustafson.
Good afternoon and good evening, Ms. Richardson. This is Senator Penry Gustafson. I don't know what you can see. I was really delighted to see your name come up on this list specifically. We've worked together through Senator Tim Scott's office. I know you to be impeccable in your legal expertise, your education, your professionalism, and I strongly agree that you will make an excellent board member for the Santee Cooper Board. I want to thank you for your willingness to serve on this board. And I also just like to add, it's not your race or gender who got you here. It's your hard work, and you're phenomenal. And we're really happy to have you in South Carolina. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Senator Malloy.
Mr. Chair, is there anyone else sign up to speak?
Any further questions of Senator Campson?
We'll let Senator Kempson go first. I like to speak last.
Am I recognized?
Yeah,
Mr.
Senator
Chairman?
Campson, I'm sorry.
Okay. Ms. Richardson, thank you for your willingness to serve. And also, I want to, I know it was in jest, but come to the defense of my friend Clarence Davis, who I had a role in appointing him to this board, is because I was co-chairman of Governor Sanford's transition team at the time, and he was an outstanding board member and a mentor for all to follow. And I wanted to ask you about your Palmetto Community Developers. What is that? Is that your primary job or focus at this point? And what is that? If you would please share that with us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I officially rolled up with Senator Scott's team at the end of December and started my own company, Palmetto Community Developers. The short story is it's a real estate development and consulting firm with a focus on affordable housing, among other things, but there's also a broader focus on economic development. And so that is my primary source of employment. And so what that looks like right now is consulting for a number of groups who are trying to put together financing for affordable housing or other projects.
Okay. And you've practiced law for how many years? I guess you're not practicing at the moment, but you did actively practice for several years.
That's right. I practiced on the nose practicing from 2015 to 2020, so 5 years, 1 year as a law clerk, and then 4 years as an assistant U.S. attorney. And so when I went to work for the senator, strictly speaking, I wasn't practicing, but I was still sort of, we're writing the laws at that
Well,
point.
yeah, when you're making law, you are practicing law, right? Okay, well, I think the only negative I can see in your resume is you're not a graduate of the finest law school in the nation, because that is the South Carolina School of Law.
Preach it, preach it.
Instead of Harvard, so, thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you, sir.
Senator Malloy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think I would venture to say I know Alyssa better than anybody else on this committee. We spent a lot of time together. I knew her father, who was also a superintendent in our school district for many years in Lee County. I think she was, you born in Marion or Dillon? Are you born in Marion?
Technically, I was born in Marion, grew up in Dillon.
But she grew up in Dillon, so good things happen in rural areas. And so I think Alyssa may rival Mr. Bernanke and Darius Leonard and some of the other great folks that have come out of Dillon for what they have done during the years. And so I've known her for a long time. As soon as she was in law school, her father used to always talk about her and her family. Dr. Cleo Richardson is one of the best men you ever meet. He is a principal fella. He was educated here, is a doctor, worked in the public school system, mostly in rural schools. And if you see what happened to his children, his daughter went to Furman and then Harvard. She worked in for one of the finest people I know, Judge Margaret Seymour, and then had some real high-profile cases in the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so we spent some time talking and followed her career, and very happy and pleased as to what she has done, and glad to see and applaud and a tip of the hat to the governor as we continue to screen people. And I don't care about who's the first or the last, but I just want to make certain that I just left a meeting on higher education where there are no African American women on the Commission on Higher Education out of 15. That's unacceptable. And so I just think that we have to make certain that we continue to have qualified people. And so when you say you don't have qualified people, let's just go look I think that we have a person that's eminently qualified. For one of my other good friends, I get the other side of the aisle, Tim Scott, who's a very fine man, and we had lots of conversations about working with Senator Scott and what happens in the rest of her career. And I think that this is just another time that she's offering to serve. So congratulations on time well spent in her early career. I think that this committee is fortunate to be able to stand here, sit here, to be able to vote on your favorable report on your confirmation. And I will end up waiting until the next time. I hope that you will come back and educate these folks as to what is going on with the rest of the world and to continue to set an example for our children. So with that, I move a favorable report for Alyssa to become appointed to the board.
All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Any opposition? There being none, and good afternoon, good evening, Ms. Richardson. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
All right, we're going to go back now. Mr. Dalton, come on up, if you will, please, sir.
All right, Mr. Dalton, nice to see you. Please raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your full name.
Charles Edward Dalton.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Dalton is here for the 4th Congressional District seat, term January 1, 2022 to January 1, 2026. He was appointed by the governor April 5th of this year. So Mr. Dalton has also come before the Review Committee and Screening Subcommittee, and it has been determined that he meets the general qualifications prescribed by law for service as a director of Santee Cooper. Mr. Dalton is a resident of Greenville, South Carolina. He has been a resident of South Carolina for at least the immediate past 5 years and is a qualified elector of this state. Mr. Dalton meets the education requirement, having a Bachelor of Science degree from Clemson University in 1964. Mr. Dalton possesses a background of substantial duration and expertise in energy issues as exhibited by his professional experience and training. Mr. Dalton recently retired from Blue Ridge Electric Cooperative, where he served as president and chief executive officer from 1982 to 2018. Prior to that, he worked for Dalton's Furniture and Carpet from 1966 to 82 and Burlington Industries from 1964 to 66. He has served on the Commission on Higher Education since 2020, and prior to that, or a while back, served as a highway commissioner from 79 to 83 and 87 to 91. He served on Pickens City Council from 1970 to 78. Mr. Dalton's responses to written and oral questions reflect that he understands various electric issues in South Carolina and has working knowledge of the operations and activities of Santee Cooper. The Review Committee's investigation did not reveal any evidence of unethical conduct by Mr. Dalton and did not reveal any evidence of convictions or criminal allegations made against him. Therefore, Mr. Dalton has been nominated for initial appointment to the Board of Directors of Santee Cooper. The Review Committee believes Mr. Dalton possesses the statutory qualifications and has depth of experience to serve on the Santee Cooper Board of Directors. Mr. Dalton, do you understand the obligations and responsibilities of this position?
Yes, sir, I do.
Are you committed to serving a full term?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions by any of the members of the full committee? I'm just going to start, and very briefly, Mr. Dalton, you have already given testimony 2 separate times. There's a transcript of your testimony. Do you reaffirm the answers that you gave those prior 2 occasions?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Questions by? All right. Senator Rice was recognized for comments and/or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Dalton, Charles, I call you, but
Please.
we've known each other for 35 years, and you have given the gift of yourself to serve this state in many different areas, and I appreciate what you've done, and Mr. Chairman, I move favorable report.
All right. Seconded by Senator Hutto. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? There being none, Mr. Dalton, beautifully done. Next up, Please.
All I can say is thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Next up, we've got John West. And as you approach, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth again?
Do.
Very good. Have a quick seat.
Thank you. The Berkeley County seat on the Santee Cooper Board, term January 1, 23 to January 1, 27. He was appointed April 5th. He meets the general qualifications prescribed by law for service as a director. He's a resident of Moncks Corner and has been a South Carolina resident for the last immediate past 5 years. He is a qualified elector of the state. Meets the education requirement. Bachelor of Arts, University of South Carolina, 1978, and JD from USC School of Law in 82. Mr. West possesses a background of substantial duration and expertise in law and energy issues as exhibited by his professional experience. He is currently the managing partner of West Law Firm, a role he has held since 2005. He initially, after law school, worked for the same firm from 82 to 1990 before joining Santee Cooper, where he worked as in-house attorney from 90 to 95, vice president of property and legal services, 95 to 2000, and executive vice president and chief legal officer, 2000 to 2004. He has also served as the mayor of Moncks Corner, 93 to 96. He was a member of the State Election Commission, including chairman from 2002 to 2006. He was chairman for 2 of those years, and also served on the Daniel Island Annexation Commission. Responses to written and oral questions reflect that Mr. West understands various electric issues in South Carolina, working knowledge of the operations and activities of Santee Cooper. Investigation did not reveal any evidence of unethical conduct against Mr. West, nor any convictions or criminal allegations. Therefore, Mr. West has been nominated for initial appointment to the Board of Directors of Santee Cooper. The Review Committee believes Mr. West possesses the statutory qualifications and has depth of experience to serve on the Santee Cooper Board. Mr. West, you understand the obligations and responsibilities of the position?
I do.
And are you committed to serving a full term?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, members of the full committee with questions of Mr. West. Any questions?
I just want to make an observation.
All right,
I've known John West for some time. He is a man of outstanding character and knowledge about this organization, and I'm glad to see that he is offering himself in this regard, and we've had a lot of discussion about fiduciary duties and the duty of care and prudence and loyalty, and I know that he is somebody that will uphold those standards. So we appreciate your service to the state of South Carolina.
Thank you, Senator Sand.
I just want to echo the sentiments of the other senator from the lesser part of Charleston, and I would like to move adoption. He's impeccable.
All right, sir, you now are adopted by the senator from, so, are you a well-behaved, anyway. All right,
I will be for her.
Motion made and seconded by Senator Hutto. Any opposition to that motion? First, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There being no opposition, Mr. West, my final question to you, as with Mr. Dalton, the answers you've given us, this subcommittee's PERC full committee, under oath, do you affirm the answers you've already given us?
I do.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. And then, Mr. Basha, come on up, and we will be briefer, amazingly, with Mr. Basha, actually, not Ba. It's Basha, correct?
Like I said, just don't call me late for supper.
Yeah.
All right. So as mentioned previously, Mr. Basho is here for an ex officio position. That is a position that was created by Act 90 of 2021. It's a non-voting role, but basically, they're in every executive session except for a handful. These ex officio members are appointed by the chairman of Central Electric and the board of Central Electric. So on March 21st of this year, received a letter from Mr. Basha stating that he would be replacing Rob Hostetler in the position, ex officio position appointed by the chairman of Central. Per his letter, he intends to begin serving in the ex officio role May 20th for the remainder of Mr. Hostetler's current term, set to expire July 13th of this year. And thereafter, Mr. Basha intends to serve for the following 2-year term. So for ex officio members, it's not quite the same. His name won't be on the Senate floor, but we are required to verify that he meets the qualifications per 583120C. And having done so, Mr. Basham meets the general qualifications for service. He is a resident of Rock Hill, and for the past 5 years, he is a qualified elector. He meets the education requirements, Clemson engineering degree in 1989. All right. And, so Mr. Basham's responses to written oral questions reflect that he understands various electric issues and has working knowledge of the operations of Santee Cooper. Investigation did not reveal any evidence of unethical conduct or criminal convictions. Following review of the information provided by Mr. Basha, review committee determined meets the statutory requirements to serve as ex officio. Mr. Basha, do you understand the responsibilities and obligations of this position?
I do, sir.
Committed to a full term?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Campson.
Well, I would like the committee to know that I've known Mr. Basha since, I don't know how old you were. I'm going to give away my age, but we attended church together for many, many years in the Mount Pleasant area, East Cooper Baptist. And he's an outstanding individual, a man of real integrity and faith and competence.
Thank you, sir.
And I'd love to move for a favorable report, but I know that the senators from York County want to do that. But I knew him before you did. I wanted you to know that.
Well, I would say Mr. Chairman, if I may, he may have upgraded his church since he was here, because he and I attend the same church now in Rock Hill.
Well, I may not, it's close. It's a tie. You know?
Senator Campson, I think I was there when you met your wife on Lake Moultrie, I think it was. So, yeah, it was an honor.
That was in the Beaufort River. She was jumping off a outrigger of a shrimp boat from 50 feet in the air.
You know, I have the memory of Governor Sanford's State of the State and calling you out. Let's don't go there. Let's stop this. Before these motions are made, same question is asked of these other nominees. Do you affirm the answers that you've given previously under oath regarding your role, the unique role you have as the ex officio member on this board?
I do, sir.
Okay. Senator Clymer is
All right.
recognized.
In keeping with the kind words of the senator from Charleston, I move for a favorable report on Mr. Basha's nomination.
All right. Seconded by Senator Johnson and others. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? There being none, thank you very much. All right, folks. Minority Affairs nominees, bear with us. We are going to carry this over. You may not know it, but we have 2 weeks. We don't time out on Thursday. So if y'all will bear with us, we're going to jump to a couple of bills and hopefully, say again? Hopefully come back to y'all momentarily, but please bear with us, okay? I want to go to item C on the agenda. We've got a number of House bills. We want to knock these out as quickly as we can. Again, within the time frame, recognize the subcommittee members, Senator Senator Hutto et al.
This is the fentanyl bill. We are placing the Senate version on the House bill that comes over to us. And so the First Amendment would put the Senate version on the House bill. Or the second part of the amendment adds the upgraded charge of possession of a gun by a person convicted of more than a year to adjust the felon in possession of a gun law, something that law enforcement, the governor's office, and others have been pushing strongly this year. Seen numerous law enforcement people here in the audience with us. It would create a penalty of up to 5 years for first offense and graduates up from there. That is the subcommittee amendment in essence.
All right, Senator Harpootlian.
Senator Hutto, would you yield to a question?
I will.
So as I read 1623-500, it says, except as provided in subsection F, it's unlawful for a person who's been convicted of
take out the violent crime felony and change it to a crime punishable by more than a year.
Okay, breach of trust over $10,000 is a crime punishable by more than 1 year.
We took out, if you look in, there's a section where we take out the sort of white-collar offenses.
Can you point that out to me?
It's in section F. I'm not sure exactly which one you're talking about. We took out the misdemeanors, crimes from other jurisdictions. Seems like we at subcommittee, we discussed this, and sort of the white-collar crimes were not included, although I can't see. Mr. Maldonado, do you see what? Sorry. Didn't we say that the white-collar crimes were out?
Yes.
But where's that section in here?
That's business stuff. No.
Mr. Chairman, while they're looking for that, we are getting back to the minority
yes.
board members. Okay,
Yes.
just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
they knew
Yeah, we're
we're going to
communicating
get
with
the
them right now.
minority board members back.
We're communicating with them right now.
In subsection F, for the purpose of the section, crime punishable by maximum term of imprisonment of more than 1 year, the exclusion is any offense pertaining to antitrust violations, unfair trade practices, restraints of trade, or similar offenses related to the regulation of business practices.
So that doesn't address what I'm concerned
Well,
about.
I would ask that we let this get out on the floor and put your amendment on there. I understand what you're getting at, but we got 2 days left.
And I'm more than happy to do that,
Okay.
but can somebody draft an amendment that would deal with property crimes, maybe? I mean, if you look at all the crimes, and again, because our code is so screwed up.
Well, we can get it, let's just get it out.
Very 19th century technology. Okay, so
Can we give Dick one for his slip?
can somebody draft, Bob, an amendment, maybe just say property crimes, or, I mean, does DUI enhance? I mean, there are a number of offenses that those folks don't concern me about having a gun offense. If we could get that done, I'd like to go ahead and.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, I can work with you.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
Then
Yes, sir.
I'm for getting this out on the floor.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Malloy.
so I'm trying to, so I want to make sure that we are where we are. The subcommittee has an amendment, but we got an amendment over here, we got an amendment that's coming from there. There's no way we're gonna be able to do all that. Is there any way that we could just pass the Senate version and then put those amendments on the floor?
That's what we're gonna do.
But we changed the Senate version, right? Did we change the Senate version? So we just put in Senate version on the House bill?
Right, on the House
Good.
bill.
Well, let's pass that and be done.
And then we'll take up the amendments.
Take
on
all the
floor.
amendments up on the floor,
Right, that's
as
what we
opposed to
intended.
trying to further amend it here in committee.
Exactly. We're all saying the
Move to
same
adopt the
thing.
amendment.
Second.
All right, motion made, is there a second?
Second.
All right,
Right, and
Motion made
and Mr. Chair, and just so we can be clear, the Senate has already passed the bill. So we got a House version that is here. We amending that to put the Senate bill on it, correct? And then, so when we get on the floor for these for these other ideas that we have, then we can address those then and see where we have the differences if we get to conference.
all right, motion made and second, Senator Campson.
Question, do we have a severability clause in this? And if so, we probably should. We can reserve that for the floor.
Let's reserve it for the floor.
All right, motion made, any further discussion, seconded, all in favor say aye.
Mr. Chairman, this is on the
Senator.
amendment.
Yes.
Correct. on the
I'd like to be
amendment.
recorded as voting no on the amendment.
Senator Rice.
I want to clarify, this is on the adopting the Senate version. This is not the amendment that's in here,
Subcommittee amendments, what we're doing.
but not the second one.
It's all in one, yes.
Which includes the Senate version of the fentanyl language, but it also includes felon in possession.
Felon in both of those, yes. And we'll straighten it out on the floor.
Can we take that portion out of it and vote on just the fentanyl part? Because I have some concerns on that too.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
better.
again, that's subject to the vote, but the goal would be, again, to advance that, everybody reserving their rights to fix it and amend whatever else you would want to. The intent is to do, Senator Clymer has offered, again, a tweak on the original felon in possession. We are apparently close, I'm not aware, but it deals with the 1 year to 5 year, I think. But again, reserving all rights, you offer it on the floor if you will, vote against it here if you like, but the goal would be to get that out. All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
No.
All right, vote more liberally. Those in favor say, raise your hand if you will. All right. Good. All right, those in opposition, raise your hand.
And this is on the amendment, right?
Yes. No, this is on the amendment.
Hands high, please, hands high. All right, by a vote of 15 to 7, the amendment passes.
Move
Now,
favorable report is amended.
seconded. All right, seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? There being none. All right, let's go quickly. If we will, we're going to go to all right, we're going to go to the adoption language that has been rounded about. Senator Garrett and others, Senator Shealy, we're going to try to do this as quickly as we can. It is a House bill. And then, quickly. All right, Senator Talley, tell us about the bill, if you will.
Mr. Chairman, this is H
Subsection
3553.
Tab A, I think.
The amendment that's before you takes two other bills, two other House bills. There were 4 adoption bills. One we did not take up. I can talk more about that in a minute, but the other 2 we combined into this one. What this will do is eliminate the mandatory 90-day waiting period for a final adoption hearing. This applies to special needs children and children who do not fall under the special needs definition, and that is a specific definition for adoptions that is tied to some IRS language and some tax credits that are available. That is one of the main things that this does. The other things that we do, it deals with termination of parental rights actions that can be consolidated with permanency planning hearings that are taking place in DSS matters. This also says that if at any time after the court removes custody of a child, the department, that being DSS, files a petition for TPR, then they must exercise and document every reasonable effort to promote and expedite an adoptive placement and the adoption of the child prior to any permanency planning or TPR hearing. We had a robust discussion over the course of 2 meetings about this. DSS was present and helped, as did members of the private bar.
All right, Senator Garrett, you were on that subcommittee as well. We don't need to, in the interest of time, you support and agree with what Senator Talley has represented? I do. Okay. Is there a motion?
Move to adopt the amendment.
A motion made to adopt the subcommittee amendment. Second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right, now a motion, Senator Talley, on behalf of the full favorable report, seconded by Senator Stevens. All in favor say aye. Any opposition? There being none. All right. Minority Affairs folks, y'all come on up real quick. We're gonna, if y'all don't mind, again, and Senator Shealy is here. Lord, she could have done this by herself in the hallway. If y'all don't mind, there are, we've got 3 nominees. I wanted, and I apologize for brevity. Y'all both have a seat, if you will. Senator, Mrs. Fuss, Ms. Maple, and Mr. Barber, correct? Y'all all pull up a chair. Isn't it, what a gentleman to let all the ladies have a seat. And forgive the,
He's just gonna stand now. Let me just stand up.
Thank y'all all for being here. If you will, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, and starting left, your name for the record, please, ma'am.
Kayla Maple.
Ms. Maple?
Daniel Barber.
Mr. Barber?
I'm Estrada Fuss.
Very good. All right, very briefly, and again, in the interest of you not having to come back a later time, very quickly, Ms. Crawford, who you've met with, is going to ask a few questions and open it up to the floor for full committee questions. Left to right.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Nathaniel Barber is a candidate for appointment to the State Commission for Minority Affairs. His appointment is for a term beginning June 30th, 2019 and ending June 30th, 2023. And he's also up for reappointment for a term beginning June 30th, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2027.
Y'all, and I apologize, so you don't have to come back. You have transcripts, you have submitted PDQs to the full committee, correct?
And they have summaries.
And you have no objection to those redacted being included in the record today, do you? Everyone affirmatively, sir, say it. Sir, you do not, Mr. Barber? Okay, Ms. Fuss? Okay. Why do you want to serve on this committee? Well, again, left to right. Why do y'all want to serve? What is your individual responses to that question?
Resident of the state of South Carolina, and being a minority, I've always had a passion to make a change and make a difference. And after I graduated with my undergraduate degree from Winthrop University, I was determined to serve my state in any way that I can. And I feel that this would be a wonderful opportunity for me to serve.
Mr. Barber?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I would like to serve because, as she mentioned, graduating from Winthrop, I worked at Winthrop for many, many years and started my work in community development then. And I continue to work in the field of community development now, and this area of focus is on people of color, and I'd just like to continue in that work.
What makes me qualify for this appointment? Being a minority, I get it. I will be a strong advocate in bringing my 45-year medical experience, skills, critical thinking to the commission. I had been an educator and senior manager and have the ability to work with minority in regards to access in their health and medical needs. I will serve as a key contributor in providing outstanding practice and care in the important appointment. I have always been a strong advocate for cultural diversity. I understand the cultural difference, and I am sensitive to its impact to the community in creating a safe space for everyone from all walks of life. Thank you.
Ms. Crawford.
I'll just ask that.
Hey, thank you.
I'll just ask this, and then you can each answer. Do you believe that any of your work experience, volunteer activities, or affiliations with any organizations presents a potential conflict with your appointment to this agency? And do you have any financial conflicts of interest that will result from your appointment?
No, I do not.
No, I do not think there's any conflict.
No, I do not. Are any of y'all lobbyists for any agencies?
No.
No. And do you understand the obligations required of your service on this commission?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you so much, Senator Malloy. Well, first, Senator Margie Bright Matthews. Very briefly, we're going to take up one more bill after these votes.
I move favorable report on Mr. Barber, Ms. Fuss, and Ms. Maple.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded.
Well, hold on, Mr. Chairman. I just
Have a discussion.
Okay, discussion.
Yep.
Just wanted to, I'm getting to it.
you want to do?
She pushing me. Just wanted to applaud these individuals for offering their service, and we appreciate you taking your time and want to make sure you know, even though we were a bit rushed, we consider this agency very important. You got a lot of very important work to do, so congratulations.
Senator Saab.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just wanted to let Ms. Maple in particular know that Senator Johnson wanted me to tell you he really appreciates you offering for this position. And I promised him that I would do that. He's on finance, not on judiciary. So.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Malloy.
I move them all favorable by acclamation and a message, because we have several vacancies on the Minority Affairs, and now we have a quorum with these fine people that are agreeing to serve. And so we have these boards around that they're constantly filled up. We need appointments so that we can make certain that you all can have some colleagues to end up joining you. So make recommendations to the governor so that we can end up getting this board filled. This is very important positions. So I move that we vote them all in by acclamation.
All right, and without any nay-vate, that motion carries. Y'all, my apologies, but you will thank me when we don't call you back. Your names will go before the full committee and a full Senate, and again, we appreciate your willingness to walk the walk, Ms. Fuss, because you know what you're talking about. You know the role. So to each of you, thank y'all so much. All right, we're going to jump back to the calendar. These regs that we have, they will time out, and so those are not important to do today. We're going to take up two more bills. Senator Rice on behalf of 109, Senator Rice and Senators Clymer for 109. Recognize Senator Clymer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senators, we began to discuss this bill a couple weeks back, and I guess, Mr. Chairman, I want to ask if those side-by-sides are still available, if you want to pass those out, or you just want to get to the, okay, you want me to get to the amendments?
Yeah, get to the amendments, if you will.
All right, so the subcommittee amendment strikes the Senate language of the bill with the blessing of the Senate sponsor of the bill and replaces it with the House passed language on constitutional carry. That's the first amendment. And then there's a second amendment dealing with felon in possession language, which is somewhat similar, although a little bit different than what we just considered with the fentanyl trafficking statute. And then a third amendment by the senator from Pickens, which I'll let him describe.
All right, we have two amendments. Senator Rice. Say again.
Mr. Chairman, I make adoption of this.
Motion made for adoption of the two amendments described. Is there a second? Second. All right, now, motion made and second. Now, discussion. Senator Sin.
Yes, you said it was a little bit different from the last felon in possession. Of course, well, but we're about to vote, right? So I just need to know, because I haven't checked with law enforcement to see how it differs.
In fairness, I mean, let me give you a copy of it, because that's why I asked for the side-by-side.
Arguably, it's a technical amendment defining 1 year to conform with federal law. We have certain misdemeanors that carry up to 5-year term. Artful language to try to conform with federal law is the intent. So we can look at that on the floor if we've got questions on that again. All right?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kempson.
Has there been a subcommittee report on this bill?
Yeah, we have a subcommittee amendment, yeah.
Okay, and so can somebody just explain? We're about to put a loaded weapon on the street. We're going to put a loaded weapon on Main Street.
Yeah, so
can you explain the bill?
Yeah, this would bring South Carolina in line with what I believe is similar law in 26 other states. Regarding our citizens' ability to defend themselves without first having get permission from the government.
And what does it do? Do you have to have? So does this do away with the concealed weapons permit?
No, it does not. It makes it optional.
So it's no longer a requirement.
That's correct.
Where we are now is we have open carry, but in addition to open carry, you have to have a CWP, correct?
In certain circumstances, yes. In other circumstances, no.
Okay, and so there is some requirement, whether circumstances present itself, that you have to have a CWP.
With certain types of firearms.
And was there testimony by, what was law enforcement's testimony? Does law enforcement support the bill or not?
Several folks who were in law enforcement came and testified against the bill. Some others are in a position of neutrality, provided that the felon in possession language is included with the bill.
And as one of the bill's sponsor, I'm just curious as to why you think it's a bad idea to, and I'm characterizing that, I'm not speaking for you, but not to have, in light of all of the violence, particularly gun violence, why do you think it's a good idea to do away with CWP?
So in the same way that the Constitution gives each of us as Americans the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, so on and so forth, so too does the Constitution vest our citizens with the right to keep and bear arms. And I've never been comfortable with the government requiring a permission slip on the way to exercising that constitutional liberty, and so this would correct that mistake.
And I appreciate your legal interpretation, Mr. Lawyer, about the Constitution, but your interpretation is viewed in a vacuum. All you have to do is look on television and read in the paper to see that gun violence is a major topic. And what I'm trying to do is reconcile your bill with how you think that's going to be helpful.
So the bill doesn't change who can purchase a firearm. It doesn't change who can possess it. It just changes where you can possess it.
Yeah, and so it would be, I mean, it's only reasonable to suspect if you got more people carrying open carry, which, by the way, I don't know anybody who wants to do that other than someone waiting to provoke a fight, that you would have more incidents of violence, especially if the people carrying don't have training.
I can understand why you would make that
Real quick,
assertion,
ladies and
but
gentlemen of the
facts
audience,
don't-
y'all are going to have to be very respectfully quiet. I urge you, please. Thank you so much.
Just mention that the facts don't support that thesis.
Name me one example. Name me one example, Senator.
26 other states have comparable laws on the books.
And
they all have varying issues with crime and so on and so forth that varies by state for a variety of conditions.
And 49 states have hate crime bills, but South Carolina does not have a hate crime bill. So under that analysis, when we go back in, we'll pass hate crimes, right?
No, not at all.
Well, that's your rationale.
That's not my rationale.
Well,
you posited a thesis.
With respect.
And I just said the facts don't support your thesis.
All right, name me one example where citizens are safer, where, or one example where a person that is carrying a gun under constitutional carry has saved a life.
So I recall watching a video from a church in Texas where an armed assailant came in to attack the congregation, and one of their parishioners stood up and killed the guy before he could kill anybody else. So there would be one, but I mean, put me on the spot with a lot of examples. Let me get back to you on the floor. Sure. Okay. But just give the first one that came to my head.
And I respect, I can't hear. We can hear you. The senator and I, we are colleagues that respect each other. We disagree.
I would say I would feel safer if you were carrying a gun in more places.
Well, you won't be safe if because I haven't been trained, and I have a great deal of respect for the Constitution. But I think what we're doing, and I'm going to be done because I know that there are plenty of others who want to be heard. I think we're making South Carolina more dangerous, and this bill is in light of the current gun violence statistics, not only in this state, but across the nation. To me, it's a disregard for the current environment. And Mr. Chairman, with respect, in my view, I think it's dangerous to allow this loaded weapon to get on the Senate floor. Now, we recognize that we probably won't get to pass it this session, because we only got 3 more days, but I can tell you, I'm going to ask staff to draft a number of amendments, and we're gonna have a lot to say if this bill does pass out of this committee on the Senate floor.
Senator Harpootlian, ever so briefly.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me say this. This is our opportunity to ask questions of the subcommittee. And if I am somewhat expansive in those questions, it's because someone who has worked with law enforcement, as I have in the past, and have seen the result of gunshot wounds on numerous occasions, gone to hospitals and interviewed victims who've been shot. You know, I was watching a movie the other day, John Wick, which I really like, but the violence in it is extraordinary. And when people get shot, typically they get shot and fall down. That's not been my real-world experience. So as I ask these questions, it's based on my real-world experience. When a police officer walks up to somebody who's got a gun strapped on, do they have the ability to ask them any questions?
You can always ask. You don't have to answer.
I understand, but they have the ability to walk up to somebody and say, can I see some identification?
I mean, so law enforcement can approach anyone and ask any questions, but wherever any citizen goes, you still retain your constitutional rights to answer only those questions that you're compelled to answer.
All right. And if that person, as the police officer approaches, their hand moves near their gun, what's the appropriate response to that for that law enforcement officer? I mean,
that's a hypothetical around which I've just
no, it's not
in a position to opine.
Okay, well, let me explain this.
Well, how did he move the hand? What's the circle? I mean, there's so many other variables at play that might enter into the calculation of a law enforcement officer under those circumstances that I can see a lot of different. It can go a lot of different directions.
Okay, let me give you a little history lesson. After this country was formed, the Constitution was passed, of the 13, actually 14, of the original states, all but one passed a prohibition against the carrying of weapons, handguns specifically, in their state. Now, that's eroded over the past couple of centuries, but we visited that again in the American West. It was against the law to carry a pistol into Tombstone, for instance. You had to check it at the city limits because the law enforcement back then, a guy named Wyatt Earp, recognized the fact that guns, I mean, there was a need for guns out in the wilds, like Lake Wiley, but not necessarily in Rock Hill. And so you could not bring a pistol into, and a number of the cities in the West had these prohibitions. Matter of fact, a little known history fact, if you remember the gunfight at the OK Corral, that's because when the Clantons came to town, Ike Clanton being the head of the Clanton gang, they weren't really a gang, they were a family. One of his siblings told Virgil when he said, you got to check your gun, no, I'm not doing that. Virgil beat him to a pulp, just beat the hell out of him, which caused the Clantons to all grab their guns and go to a place called the OK Corral, where there was a shootout. Ike, by the way, had left his gun. Ike wasn't killed because he wasn't armed. But I'm saying they enforced that strictly. Wyatt Earp, his brothers, anybody that brought a gun into town was subject to arrest or getting the hell beat out of them, which was apparently the Earp's default position. This was not only in Tombstone, it was in virtually every Western town because they recognized guns in town are not necessary. And here we're going back, we're pre-Wild West, saying anybody can strap a gun on and walk around town or hide a gun. What concerns me is we've had so many shootings in this town by underage folks that I would propose an amendment to have this not apply to anyone under the age of 21 as a beginning. Can I get a second for that?
What was the motion?
The motion would be that this bill, the provision in this bill would not provide, the permission to carry a gun would not apply to anyone under the age of 21.
Chairman?
Mr. Chair, so for parliamentary inquiry.
Yeah, that's where I am.
So I think that we're not in compliance now because we got two amendments before us and they need to be one. Okay, and so the issue is that are we going to vote on that amendment? What is your pleasure for that? So we can have discussion, get a vote on that, and then get a vote on the bill. And
The two amendments, again, have been described, again, in perhaps haste. I'm trying to move this along to a dispositive vote up or down of the bill. And we are now in the moment of period of discussion on those amendments.
Okay, so is it possible? Is it either one of those technical in nature? Mr. Chair, Steve Senator from York will yield. Are either one of your amendments technical in nature?
No, they're both substantive.
And could you explain those quickly again? I'm sorry, because
So the subcommittee amendment strikes is a strike and insert amendment that replaces the entirety of the Senate bill with the bill as it passed the House of Representatives, minus one section dealing with felon in possession. So that's the entirety of the subcommittee amendment. Separately, we have another amendment that.
Hold on.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, in order so we can see where we are, would you offer that, or maybe we could do it by unanimous consent to adopt that?
I would like to.
And then amend to the other amendment? It doesn't, it's not what we, it's not what, but you can't do on two amendments at the same time is my
Right.
issue. Trying to get one at a time.
Motion for that earlier.
You had a motion for two different amendments.
Well, we had a motion to adopt the First Amendment,
Okay. What's before us then?
Which was,
Subcommittee amendment.
the subcommittee amendment.
we have not voted on either of the two
Correct.
amendments for the record. The first one is, again, strike and insert of S-109 with the House-passed version of the same bill. The open carry without training.
H
30,
Mr. Chair, how do we know what the House bill is if you can't give us the number?
At our last,
3594 is the House-passed version.
as I asked at the outset, at our last Judiciary Committee meeting, a side-by-side was distributed to the committee. I'm wondering if perhaps that might not be an option for us here as well.
I have copies downstairs that were messed up, but yeah.
So again, that amendment,
I'm okay with getting the amendment passed so we can have something that we can vote on and then we can have the amendment reserving all rights, but to have two at one time, it's just confusing. So making one motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of the subcommittee amendment.
Move to table.
all right, motion made to table, all in favor of.
Roll call.
Is there a second?
Roll call.
And again, roll call required, requested. That motion to table is the amendment that inserts the House version
Less section
into
16.
109, less section 16. All right. It's the felon in possession with stepped-up penalties, which is section 16, which is what we've just adopted to the fentanyl bill earlier, seemingly hours ago, but not that long.
And Mr. Chairman, just important to note that the next amendment up deals with section 16, which two
All right,
separate vehicles.
So again, the amendment before us is to adopt what the House did in their bill,
Without us having the House bill.
correct, to S-109. So,
Mr. Chair, you hold your amendment for 1 second? So I would encourage the body, to get us to a point that we can vote. And so tabling the amendment at this point in time, at this juncture, is probably not the best course. If we can see what we're going to vote on ultimately, then we can see where the committee stands. And so I would urge us to have that amendment. It doesn't matter which form that is in, and then we'll have a chance for discussion and the ultimate vote.
I'm going to renew my motion to table.
all right, motion made. Is there a second to that again? All right, all in favor?
Roll call.
On the First Amendment, all those in favor of the motion to table, raise their hand. Just raise your hand. All in favor of the motion to table the House version into 109, less Section 16, which will be the Second Amendment. All right, those in favor of the motion to table, we got them, everybody? All right, 6 in favor. Those in opposition to the motion to table, raise your hand. A few more than 6, that motion fails. All right, motion for.
Recorded is not voting.
Yeah, all right. Senator Matthews.
Point of order. Again, we have not had a full explanation of the House version. How do you dovetail this S-109 into anything without having the actual House bill before us?
It's not a point of order.
It's
not a point of order. It comes too late. Let it go. They can vote it down.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, point of order comes too late.
But the bill is in.
Recognized.
Your, packet. It's the same thing as 109. All right, now the Second Amendment, as described as reinserting the felon in possession and graduated penalties into the open carry, or whatever y'all call it, the open carry without training bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Senators, I gather you're probably familiar with a great portion of this language because we just considered it in conjunction with the fentanyl trafficking statute. And so, the amendment before us.
Let me interrupt real quick. We need to dispose of the Amendment 1. That motion to table failed. Now the motion is to adopt that. Motion made, second. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Those in opposition?
No.
Okay. More generally, those in opposition to the motion to adopt that, please raise your hand. If you oppose that, please raise your hand.
This is the one that I gave you last week. What we're on now.
All right. No, it was 6 the last time. All right, so 7 in opposition to that. Those in favor, please raise your hand of the adopting that as this First Amendment subcommittee. Raise your hand. All right. Appearing to be more than 7, that motion passes. Now, the Second Amendment, Senator Clymer.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry. Is this amendment in senators' packets or notebooks?
Your amendment has just been handed out.
So it's not in here?
It's
right here.
It was handed out. It was a handout amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me just briefly describe the biggest change. The biggest change is that it restructures the amendment to make it read better. Whereas in the prior amendment or the House version of the amendment, it has similar language in the first couple paragraphs, and then it says except as defined in section F, which is then at the end of the amendment. And so we moved all this up to the front to make it cleaner to read, easier to understand on the part of anyone who wanted to read it and try to understand it. And that's the biggest change.
Chairman.
And it's similar to what we just adopted.
Senator Clymer, yield the question. So
Welcome to
how
Mike,
does this
please.
differ from what we just adopted for fentanyl?
That's what I just said. It reads better.
So it's
More
exactly the same.
Artfully drawn.
It's more artfully drawn, to use the.
Well, when somebody tells me that as a lawyer, I always want to read the contract when they tell me it's been more artfully. So what's the difference?
Urge you to read it and ascertain which one makes more sense to you.
That'll take about 30 minutes.
It's 2 pages.
Substantively
similar.
All right. Any discussion on the Second Amendment by Senator Clymer? The motion for that. Motion made and seconded. All in favor of that, please say aye. Aye. Those in opposition? No. Okay. The ayes have that. All right. Now, Senator, motion made for favorable. Is there a second?
Chairman, would the Senator withhold his motion, please? I also have an amendment that I'd like to have passed out. An amendment that, in essence, disallows the carrying on schools, colleges, youth athletic events in the county, municipal, special purpose districts, parks or recreation centers for a county, municipal, special purpose district.
I'm rudely interrupting, but would that conform to the existing CWP language to carve out places you cannot carry?
Very close, Mr. Chairman. I
Okay.
can't say that it's word for word, but very close.
All right. Anybody opposed to that, again, assuming that it's very close and near about exactly the same carve-outs under the existing CWP law? Any opposition to that?
question.
And I tell you what, if you don't mind, Senator Williamsburg, might you carry that one to the floor, or we got one other that's been carried over, but if you insist, we'll do it. We'll do it. Senator, again, Senator Adams, real quick.
Real quick, is this not already law to where the private property puts up a sign and it's already prohibited? Is it not fall in there? And the schools are already prohibited.
Now, I think clearly the athletic facilities and other places are not prohibited. And I don't think we ought to force every place that doesn't want a gun to be carried to have to post a sign. I think at some point we've got to take responsibility on where we say guns are permitted and not permitted. And in my mind, these are reasonable places that those guns have no place. And so I've got an appreciation for the fact that bars can, put up a sign saying no guns in here. But I think when it comes to public facilities and those kinds of things, I think that's where we come in.
And again, I'm not telling you.
I don't have a problem carrying it over, Senator. No, I appreciate what you're saying. You're carrying yours over. I'll carry mine over as well.
All right.
I've got no problems there.
We have one more bill behind this, folks. So,
Mr. Chair,
Senator Malloy.
so what's before us now, the bill as amended?
Yes.
Okay, and so there are no other amendments having the senator from Williamsburg consented, and the senator from Pickens also consented to carry theirs over, right?
Correct.
So I move to call the question.
All right, motion.
If the senator would please hold it, I just have one quick question. Who was the subcommittee chair?
Senator Clymer.
I would ask if he would yield for a quick question. Senator Clymer, I see that we have a number of law enforcement officers that are here. I see the sheriff from Orangeburg and other folks here, and I know you've talked to a lot of people about this in law enforcement. I have one quick question. As it relates to this particular bill that you heard, did you have sworn testimony by Director Mark Keel on whether or not he and his agency supported this bill? Quick question, yes or no?
I don't think we did.
He did not. So you're telling this?
I mean, did he come?
You're telling this entire committee that we're going to entertain a permitless carry bill in this S-109 and whatever it is, and we have not received favorable testimony on the record with his hand up from Mark Keel with SLED, supporting this, because all of my folks in all of my 6 counties have said their word about this. Did your Mark Keel testify?
Mr. Chairman, if I may answer the question.
Please, and then we're going to move to call the question.
I insist.
I believe your question's asked and answered, yeah. He was
Thank
not.
you.
He did not.
All right, motion now for favorable report. Made and seconded.
Move to table the bill.
All those in favor of favorable report, please raise your hand. All right, all opposing that, please raise your hand.
11:11. Fails.
All right, y'all, we got to vote again. I apologize. We're going to vote again. All in favor of the motion for a favorable report, please raise your hand. Those in opposition, please raise your hand. All right, but by a vote of 12 to 11, the motion passes. All right, we've got one bill behind us, and that is the fastest one we're going to do today. On SLED.
Yep.
Immigration.
No.
No. All right, tell us, Senator Malloy.
So school safety, ironically, it's a school safety bill that deals with school shootings. And SLED setting up a training center in Lexington County to train our school officials on how to evacuate schools in case of an active shooter drill is something the school districts were in favor of it, SLED was in favor of it, and no amendments.
All right, any questions of the subcommittee? Senator?
Favorable report.
Motion for a favorable report, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? There being none, thank you all very much.
We're not doing endangered?
Keep walking, Senator Campson and Massey. The endangered persons,
This is just a notification. The bill would provide endangered person notifications as it relates to Alzheimer's disease and developmentally disabled autism spectrum disorder, and put it on the highway, and for digital notification by SLED, wireless emergency notification.
all right.
Move adoption.
Any opposition to that? Motion made for a favorable report. A second. All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? There being none, now we're done. Thank you.